Hi, this is Colin from Backbone Performance, and I thought I'd try to post some brief videos with my answers to common questions I get from athletes. While I always encourage athletes to reach out to me when they have questions, there are some questions that come up often enough, and I thought I'd make some videos that can be used as resources for coached and uncoached athletes alike. So let's get started. Next question, should I buy a time trial bike? And this is a question I get from a lot of people, and more specifically, I'm talking about cyclists who are primarily road racers, but maybe they do one or two stage races every year with time trials in them, or a couple standalone time trials, and they really want to know if it's worth it to get a TT bike just for a few events a year, or if they should just get some clip-on bars and put them on their road bike or something else. So first, let's take a look at the advantages of a time trial bike. A time trial bike can put your body in a more aero position, rotating your body forward sort of along the axis of the pedal axle, the bottom bracket. Time trial bikes also tend to have a lot of aero features, like aerodynamic tubing, hiding the brake and shift cables, and with a lot of the newer bikes and the so-called super bikes, integrating all the front end features like the stem, bars, headset area, to give it a more streamlined airflow. But it's important to realize that the most important thing is your body. That's going to be the biggest obstruction to airflow, and it's going to be, so the most important thing of any time trial bike is getting your body in a more aerodynamic position. And a lot of people would ask, if that's the case, can I just achieve that same position on my road bike if I can just put clip-on aero bars on there? And a lot of times the answer is yes, although not necessarily, meaning you might be able to get your body in exactly the same position on your road bike as you would on a full-on TT rig. It's just that the bike looks different underneath. But position-wise, in terms of the contact points on the bike and the position of your body, it could theoretically be exactly the same position there. And if you measure the difference in those two things in a wind tunnel, exact same position on two different bikes, you may not see that much of a difference in a lot of cases. Doesn't mean those marginal gains, so to speak, aren't important, especially in a time trial. And if you lose a couple time trials by a few seconds, you start to see, yeah, maybe these things are worth it. Maybe those marginal gains are worth it. But there's a lot of factors that are going to determine what the difference is there. How aero your road bike is to begin with. So it's hard to give exact numbers, but just for the sake of throwing out some numbers here, I've seen a couple things that show approximately a 17-second time difference time savings over a 40-kilometer time trial, which is sort of the standard unit of measurement when we talk about aerodynamic gains for time trial, for these improvements. So 17 seconds, meaning going from your road bike with clip-on bars to a full-on TT bike, same position. Not a huge difference. But there's a big but here. There are more benefits than just the pure aerodynamics of it. So first, you can't really just install your TT bars on your road bike without making some other changes. Generally, you want to, if you want to roll your body forward around the axis of the bottom bracket, you're usually looking at moving your saddle up a little bit, forward, going down in the front end, and because there's a difference in where you hold on to time trial bars versus your drop bars, most people are going to need a shorter stem. So we're talking about making some significant adjustments here, and if you're making all of these position changes, It's not just a simple thing to just clip on the TT bars, and especially if you're in a stage race. Keep in mind, a lot of stage races that have time trials, they'll do it on a double day. So they might have, for instance, a time trial in the morning and then like a second stage, a shorter stage in the afternoon. So you get done the time trial, you have to make all those adjustments right back to the way it is. Can be a pain, and you might mess something up. You might over tighten something, under tighten something, and it slips. You might just not quite get the position right. And then just in terms of training in that position, you want to get used to it, so you want to take it out and train in it. So once you make those adjustments, you're kind of locked into that. Versus with a full-on TT bike, it's nice to just have your position dialed in, and you can ride on your TT bike on Monday and Tuesday, and then take the road bike out on Wednesday, and then go back to the TT bike on Thursday, for instance. And then aside from just the logistics of making those adjustments back and forth on your road bike, there's another risk, which is that the road bike is not really designed for that position. So TT bikes tend to have a much steeper seat tube angle to get you further forward, shorter head tubes, shorter seat stays to get the rear wheel a little bit further forward. If you make all those position changes on your road bike, one of the big problems is that your body's so far forward, you don't have as much weight over the rear wheel, and so going around corners, your rear wheel could potentially wash out, or at the very least, it's not going to feel as stable. The other factor here is on a TT bike, you have your shifters right on the tip of the aero bar, so you only have to move your fingers there, as opposed to if you've got the shifting on the drop bars and you're riding on clip-on bars, you have to reach over to shift, or and just coming out of the aero bars, a dozen times in a race, that can really add up, even if you're only out of the aero bars for a split second each time. So, although you may not be significantly more aerodynamic on a full TT rig versus your road bike with clip-on bars, even replicating the same position, having a dedicated TT bike will be safer and more practical from a training perspective. So if money is no object, or if you feel like you can invest the money in a full TT bike, I'd say go for it if you've got some time trials or stage races with time trials in them and they're important to you. And also, if you're good enough in the other stages of that stage race that the time trial becomes the real deciding factor. Just to give you an example, there's this race here in Pennsylvania in August called the Tour de Millersburg, and it has a pretty flat, fast time trial. It's got a technical crit and then a hilly road race. So the time trial is flat, fast, and really you're not going to be competitive if you don't have a TT bike, or at least an aero position that's pretty dialed in. But you can do really well in TT and then get dropped in the crit. Like I said, it's technical crit. A lot of people do get dropped in that race, or in the road race, which is pretty long and pretty hilly. So if that's the case, how relevant is the time trial really? For those people, like most of us, that have limited funds and you're thinking about the best bang for your buck, a TT bike can be a good investment if you're going to use it. But there's quite a few things that I think for most people would come before that investment that I would put money in. And number one, and obviously I'm biased in this, but I would say hire a coach. But also get to races, because for most people, getting to those races, getting that experience is just really, really valuable. Getting to training camps, I think, because that training's really good, and it also really helps keep the fun and the adventure in the sport. Can be really motivating. Get a power meter in terms of equipment investments. That's going to help your training, but it's also really going to help your pacing and time trials. As far as clothing, a skin suit or a speed suit makes a huge, huge difference. Much bigger, and just to throw in some numbers, again, it depends on the person, depends on the suit we're talking, but I've seen some things that have shown a 2-minute, 12-second time savings for a 40K time trial, that's going from a regular kit to a speed suit. So what else? Aero wheels can be really, really helpful in time trials. And also, if you get something in like the 50 to 60 millimeter depth range, you're probably going to have a lot of opportunities to use those in road races too, and criteriums. So it's not just going to be the time trials. Aero booties, really, I mean, for $20 you can get a good set of aero booties, and it makes a huge difference. Keep in mind your feet are traveling through the air faster than the bike and a lot of the other non-rotating parts of the bike. So when you talk about improvements like to the wheels or to your feet, it's going to make more of a difference than, say, the frame shape, for instance. A TT helmet can help you a lot. Or if you want to go with something that's more versatile, get an aero road helmet, and that's not going to be that's going to be almost as aero as a full-on TT helmet. Plus, you'll probably use it in a lot of the mass start races too. So I'd probably put all of those things before an investment in a TT bike on that list of where you're going to get the most bang for the buck. So another factor to keep in mind with a time trial bike is that it's not just a financial investment. If you really want to be good at it, you have to spend time training in that position. And it's expected that almost everybody's going to lose some power in the time trial position, but if you just hop on to a TT bike and you haven't been training in that position at all, I mean, you might lose 25% of your power and be really uncomfortable and stiff afterwards. Which is going to make it harder, again, if we're talking about a stage race. You get done that time trial and you're supposed to do a crit in the afternoon, but your hips are just super, super sore because you haven't been riding in that position. That's going to hurt you too. So you need to train on the bike. And that means that's another bike you're going to have to maintain and clean and store. But it's also time that you're taking away from other parts of your training. So I know I haven't really answered the question here, and I have a habit of giving complicated answers to simple questions sometimes, but it is a complicated answer. So getting back to the question at hand, I think there are some easy yeses or nos to this. If you're a triathlete and you're racing primarily in non-draft legal events, definitely yes, definitely get a TT bike. If you're a road cyclist and you're thinking of doing a few important stage races with time trials or standalone time trials, or if you just think, I want to do more time trials, this is something that's appealing to a lot of people because generally less risk of crashing, or if you do crash, it's your own fault. It's not going to be somebody else that's going to take you out. Tactically, more simple, and if you want to really focus on time trials, you can get away with doing most of your time trialing most of your training on your own. You don't really need to do a bunch of group rides and races for the experience. It's for all those people, I'd say definitely yes. And for the people sort of in the middle that like I said before, maybe do a couple time trials a year, maybe attached to stage races, it can be a little bit more gray. So I'm going to give some sort of in-between solutions that might be less expensive. So let's I will give you a $100 solution, a $500 solution, and a $1,500 solution if you don't want to get a full-on like $5,000 to $10,000 time trial bike. So let's start with a $100 solution, and this is get a pair of what they call mini bars or shorty bars. I know Vision makes a pair of these. I think Profile Design does too, and really they're just shorter TT bars. So they don't extend past the levers, and they're actually legal in draft legal triathlons. But there's also a big advantage for road cyclists because really you can just clip them on and it's pretty much plug and play. you don't have to change much about your position, and you can ride in them, be more aero, and then just pop them off when you're done. Option 2, this is the $500 solution, and what this would be is buy a front end. Like buy your aero bars with the shifters on the aero bars, and the base bar with the brakes on there, and you keep all of the cables on there. And then what you do is when you're getting ready for a TT, you just pop off your regular road bars and you slide on the aero module, so to speak. And you might want to do the same thing with get an extra seat post, put your time trial saddle on there in the position you want it, just mark it with some tape, and then you just pop off the road one, pop on the time trial one. Now, you still have to keep in mind, you have to be comfortable if you're going to go this route, uncabling everything, recabling it, and being able to do it pretty quickly. Although I will say that if you have DI2 or ETAP, if you have electronic shifting, it makes this a lot easier, because you don't have you only have to really worry about the brake cables, not the shifter ones. So you still do have to deal with the handling issues that I talked about, your weight being further forward than the bike's designed for, but really you've got most of the benefits of having a full TT rig at really a fraction of the price. And then option 3, I would give you, this is the $1,500 solution. Buy a used TT bike. There are tons of people selling lightly used TT bikes and frames for a fraction of what they bought them for. It's a buyer's market, really. I'd say for $1,500 you can pick up a really, really nice used bike, and for $700 you can get a really nice frame set, and maybe you have some old parts laying around that'll help. You can build it up that way, or with relatively entry-level components. And I hate really to endorse a certain brand here, but I will say if you look at the newer Cervelo P2s, meaning they made a major model change in 2016. I think this is really a bike that's only marginally less aerodynamic than the so-called super bikes, like the Specialized Shiv, the BMC Time Machine, the Canyon SLX, the Pinarello Bolide, and so forth. And these are the best of the best in terms of TT bikes, and generally you're looking at $10,000 to $20,000. And not only that, but with all that proprietary stuff, the integrated stuff, they're really tough to work on and adjust on your own. So I just did a quick search on eBay, and I saw there's quite a few of these Cervelo P2s out there in the $1,400 to $2,000 range. And for that money, I think that's pretty tough to beat. Plus, it uses regular road brakes, a regular stem, which means that if you need to, adjust things to get into the right position, which I talked about positioning being the most important thing, you can do that on your own. And you can put on a shorter stem, a longer stem, or you can raise the bars, you can change the brake pads easily, and you don't have to go to too much difficulty to do that. So those are a few different solutions. Hopefully I sort of answered this question. If you have any other questions that you'd like me to answer, write them in the comments or email me at colin@backboneperformance.com. Happy riding.